This is Parahan, and you are listening to The Parahan Show. What's up, everybody? It's me, Parahan. Thank you guys for joining me. It is Tuesday, November 16th, and today is a very special day because today happens to be the 55th anniversary of the first Mothman sighting in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, which happened 1966, November 16th. And so we're going to talk some Mothman today. We're going to talk dreams and their meanings. And is it possible that dreams are connected to interdimensional travel? And we are going to talk the new Ghostbusters Afterlife movie. So guys, you're going to want to pay attention to the show and listen along because we got some exciting things for you. Now, Ghostbusters Afterlife, right, is coming out. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm excited because Ghostbusters was actually the first VHS tape that I ever got to watch. And I remember it like it was yesterday. Okay, it was 1994. My parents had got their first VCR. We were at a Best Buy in town, and they had this special that if you got a VCR, and it was one of those JVC VCRs, which were really nice VCRs. And I don't know if you guys know this, but this was before DVD players. And basically, if you didn't have a VCR, you weren't someone back then. Like, VCRs were the pinnacle of home entertainment systems, you know. They were the best of the best that you could get back then. So getting a VCR, which sounds crazy nowadays, was the biggest thing that could happen as far as home entertainment goes. So we were getting our first VCR, and we were at Best Buy, and they had this deal that if you bought this specific JVC VCR, then you could pick out 3 VHS tapes. And my dad was like, you know, you can pick out one of the VHS tapes. So I went through like rows and rows of VHS tapes, which there was a lot of good movies. And I stumbled upon Ghostbusters, and I had no idea what it was. But the cover just looked awesome. These dudes with these proton packs and, you know, all this cool gear. And they were hunting ghosts. And that was the premise. And I'm like, this is awesome. So I got Ghostbusters, and I must have watched that thing like 50 times that week. So that's why Ghostbusters, to me, has this huge significance, and why I'm really excited for the release of Ghostbusters Afterlife. Now, I want to talk about dreams, because a lot of us, we have these strange dreams. And it seems like lately, a lot of people have been having very vivid, strange, or odd dreams. Am I right? A lot of people, it seems like, are having these very strange, very odd dreams. So the question is, what do they mean? What is their significance? Or are they simply, you know, our subconscious thoughts being released when we sleep? Or is there something more to it? Now, I've had a lot of strange dreams. And what's interesting is I've had dreams that have actually came true. I've seen things in my dreams, and it's like the next day or the next week, these things have happened. And every once in a while, it's like I'll have a dream, and eventually those dreams do come true. And now it's nothing like crazy, you know, obviously, but it's like life events that happen. And it's almost like somehow I was able to pick up through these dreams something that was going to happen, and was able to foresee or foreshadow future events. And it's kind of eerie, you know, like how, you know, on point they had been when I have these dreams. So, you know, there's definitely something more, I think, going on. Now, you have to understand that when we sleep, we go into a very relaxed state. And especially when we get into that deep sleep, which they call the REM sleep, which our body is basically completely shut off almost, you know, and in this such a relaxed state that we start dreaming. And this is the good sleep. This is the dreams are when we are in this deep sleep. And I think what happens is that, you know, when you look at all these different religions out there, you know, Buddhism, Hinduism, even Christianity, right? They all speak of meditation, clearing your mind, relaxing your body, and getting to a place where you can be enlightened. You know, in Christianity, when you pray, right, you want to close your eyes and, you know, sort of get in this relaxed state to kind of open up your mind and sort of speak to God. In Hinduism and Buddhism, they believe sort of that you can meditate and you can go to another spiritual realm and actually astral travel or communicate with other beings. And sometimes they call these beings that aren't of this planet. And so there's a lot of religions that speak about meditation and getting into a very relaxed state. So I think one of the reasons we have these dreams and they almost seem to be spiritual is because I think, in a sense, we are meditating. We are going to a relaxed spot or a relaxed place in our minds where there's no distractions, where there's nothing bothering us, there's nothing blocking our minds for receiving a sort of a spiritual enlightenment or journey. So I think that that's why when we sleep, we have such vivid dreams sometimes, is because we're essentially meditating and we just don't realize it. And I've heard stories of people that, you know, what's really interesting. I heard this story one time. This person said that he was in a very deep sleep and he dreamed he was at a place. And this is a person that I respect and I trust and I would believe wholeheartedly, you know. And he said that he had this dream that he traveled, not traveled, but he was at this place, at a place in town. And he was hanging out with some people and he was having conversations with people that he knew. And he said, you know, when he woke up in the morning and the next day, some of those people that he had communicated with in his dream had came to him and were like talking to him about him being there at the place he had dreamed of that he was at, right? And they said, you know, hey, we seen you last night at this place downtown. And that person was like, you know, no, I was sleeping last night. And they said, no, you were there, you were hanging out with us, you did this and this and this. And they basically described his dream. And what I thought was interesting about that is that maybe perhaps he didn't realize this, but somehow he was able to project his soul or spirit, you know, an astral projection, if you will, and travel to this place because subconsciously he was thinking about it. And he was in such a relaxed state that he was able to unleash sort of this power in his mind to be able to travel to this location. And I've heard this with a lot of people, that people have said they've seen someone somewhere and they claim, you know, I've seen you at this place, but that person is sleeping. That person isn't even there or in other towns or cities. So is it possible that we can leave our subconscious bodies and actually travel to other places in the world and physically go there? And sort of like how people see ghosts, can our spirit that's inside us leave our bodies and travel to other places or even other dimensions? And that's something that I've always thought about and I've always wondered. When we sleep, do we essentially travel to another dimension, a dimension of time and space where anything is possible, and that these dreams are not just subconscious memories or subconscious thoughts. They are essentially us traveling to another dimension where other things are happening, and we're experiencing that in real time, and we're experiencing parts of this other dimension where weird and strange things happen because it's not in the same dimension as us, and they experience time and space much differently. They experience the laws of physics much differently. And I've wondered, when we sleep, do we travel to another dimension? Do we travel to another point in space and time where everything is possible? And I think there's a good possibility. I think that's why sometimes we foresee things, because we go to this place where it's sort of an alternate reality and where things have happened, and we experience things that have already happened or will happen or haven't happened, because we are traveling through other dimensions. And can we even travel through time? When we dream, are we traveling to other points in time? Could this explain what ghosts are, right? Which is an interesting theory. Think about it. When you sleep, does your spirit travel outside your body, And does it travel to other points in time and space? And people experience that as a ghost. But really, that is essentially someone is sleeping in another time, in another point in space and time. They're sleeping, and we are experiencing that person traveling to this point in time. And that's what a ghost is. And that's why these ghosts appear to be transparent. And that's why it seems like they are there, but not physically there in a sense. And I've often wondered, are ghosts simply other people that are sleeping at other points in time, visiting other points in time and visiting us through time and space? And to them, essentially, it is a dream. But to us, it is reality, and we experience them as what we've come to call them as a ghost. I know it's pretty deep to think about. It's pretty crazy when you think about it. But I've often wondered that, Like some of these ghosts you experience, like at the Myrtles Plantation, which is a place that I consider to be very haunted. You have these a lot of cases there of residual type hauntings, of where these spirits do the same thing over and over again. There was one of the spirits there is said to be a man who was shot and killed on his front porch and climbed up the stairs and died on the 17th step. Another was a former slave who lived at the plantation, Chloe, which is the most famous ghost there at Myrtles Plantation, and also two little girls that had passed away there. And you see sort of this reoccurring theme where they're almost reliving events or memories. And when you think about when we have dreams, a lot of times they're reliving events or memories. They're just a little different. There's other weird people there that we don't know. And it's like, are these people, right? Like Chloe, the ghost of Chloe, right? Is that her dreaming when she was alive in that time period? She is dreaming, but she's transported. She's sort of astral traveled to this time, to current time. And people that go to the Myrtles Plantation, they're experiencing Chloe dreaming. And think about it, right? What happens? When is the majority of ghost sightings? When do they take place? Usually it's at night. When do people sleep? Nighttime, right? So it's like interesting because our people initially traveling in their sleep to other points in time, and these people that they experience in their dream, that is occurring in real time. That's just in another point in time, And that's why we travel, we go to places that we know we're familiar with in our sleep, like our homes where we once lived, but there are all these strange people in that. So essentially, do we become ghosts when we sleep to other people in other points in time? I'm telling you, it's very crazy to think about. And, if you haven't had a chance, check out my other videos, because I've done a lot of talk on interdimensional travel and, time travel and things like that. But that's something that I've always wondered. It's something I've always thought about. So, yeah, 55 years ago today was the first sighting of Mothman, which Mothman, to me, is, you have Bigfoot and you have the Jersey Devil and you have a lot of these other cryptids, right, that have been cemented in our modern pop culture. We've known about these things. We've seen them in TVs and shows and video games, right? But to me, Mothman is probably the most craziest and almost eerie story, With the Jersey Devil, with Bigfoot, you haven't really heard about any associated deaths with these sightings, okay? There hasn't been anybody that really died or were attacked by these things, in a sense, okay? Not that we know of. But with the Mothman, okay, in 1967, several months after people began seeing the Mothman in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, the Silver Bridge in Point Pleasant collapses and 47 people die. And a lot of people believe that that was associated to the Mothman and that they had seen the Mothman before that bridge collapsed. They seen him on top of the bridge. And several people think that he was responsible for the death of 47 people. And what's eerie about Mothman is that Mothman is often seen before very bad events. He's sort of like this omen of doom. And a lot of times before something very bad happens, people start seeing Mothman. People have said they've seen Mothman before the events of Chernobyl. People have said they've seen Mothman before September 11th. And throughout time, throughout history, there's been sightings of strange, ominous creatures that I believe may have been Mothman, or what we know as Mothman, before tragic events. And a lot of people, and this is an interesting story, and they don't tell you the story, it's very hard to find. But I found a story dating back to Titanic. And apparently in the United Kingdom, in the UK, before the Titanic had left on its maiden voyage, when it picked up passengers there in the UK, I believe maybe it was in London, in that area, wherever it was in the UK, in that area, there were many sightings of a humanoid figure that was seen. And I've even heard that on the Titanic, a day before it had hit the iceberg, before it had sunk, that people seen strange lights in the sky, and they were seeing strange things flying in the sky. So, once again, you have this very tragic event and possibly a Mothman sighting. And, Mothman is just this terrifying creature, stands 10 feet tall, has these huge wings, red glowing eyes, looks very much like a bat or a moth or a giant bird, and tends to be very aggressive, flies towards people, makes chirping noises, makes vocalization sounds, sometimes even screams. That's the scariest part about it, is I've heard a lot of encounters with Mothman where this thing has looked at them and just screamed bloody murder at them. and it's just this loud, ominous scream that it lets off. I believe people have even recorded those screams, and which they've said was Mothman. You know, it's crazy because it's just very eerie. Is what I would say. It's crazy because, you know, when you hear the accounts that people have, these encounters that people have with the Mothman, it's just very terrifying. But, you know, and I think too, you know, there's, with the Jersey Devil, in a sense, there is this background of where he came from, right? Misleads and all that. And there's sort of this story about his origin. Whereas the Mothman, you know, we don't really know what the Mothman is or where it came from or anything about it, really, except that it appears before tragic events and that it's been seen all over the world, many countries, and basically its description. But outside of that, we don't know where this thing comes from, what it is. Is it extraterrestrial in nature? Is it something yet to be discovered? Some sort of unknown animal? We don't really know. And there's no stories alluding to where it came from, why it's here, anything about its background. It's just very elusive and very, it just seems like it came out of nowhere and it disappears and it appears wherever it wants to. But most recently, you know, like kind of in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, you had all those sightings during the 66, 67. But then in 67, when the Silver Bridge collapsed, that was the end of it. You didn't see Mothman anymore there in West Virginia. Now, some people say that they have had encounters there in Point Pleasant, but you really haven't had that many encounters. Okay? But what's interesting is that Mothman all of a sudden has been making rounds in Chicago. And it's interesting because this is a much bigger city than Point Pleasant, obviously. And he's been showing up in Chicago. And over the past, I would say, 5 or 6 years, there's been over like 58 sightings of the Mothman to date. And the two most recent sightings that I know of the Mothman is that the first one was at the O'Hare Airport, where a United States postal worker who was getting off of work, 11 o'clock at night, she walks out to this huge parking lot, out to her car. There's no one else out there. It was completely dark. And she said that at about a distance of 20 to 25 feet, she noticed this figure standing off in the figure. And it looked like a very tall man wearing a coat, is what she thought. And she proceeded to get inside of her car, start the car up. And when she turned on the lights, that's when she could see this wasn't a person. It was what appeared to be some sort of humanoid figure with red eyes, big long wings, looked like a bat, she said. And she said this thing let off sort of chirping sounds, really loud chirping sounds, and then it flew towards her car and then flew directly over it and missed it. And she said it terrified her. And that was one of the sightings that we had in Chicago. Now, the other sighting we had in Chicago was a man claims that on the Willis Tower, which I think, used to be the Sears Tower. I'm not sure if it's the Willis Tower anymore, if it's changed names again. But this man had seen what looked to be some sort of humanoid bird-like creature on top of the Willis Tower. And he seen this thing jump off. And he thought it was at first a man jumping off this building. But then he could see wings and it started flapping. And it flew directly away from the building and away from the town over Lake Michigan. But these are two of the many reports. What's interesting, we went up to a paranormal convention up in Chicago. And that's kind of when I first was made aware of these events that were happening. And we listened to, I think it's I believe it's Sam Morrison, Sam Marion, maybe. I apologize if I get his name wrong, but he's the head of the Illinois MUFON. He's the state director. And we listened to him talk, and he gave sort of talked about these sightings there in Chicago. But I felt like he was very dismissive of these encounters, and he investigated just 3 of these cases, which he gave to someone else, to another guy who had investigated 3 cases, but it wasn't these 2 recent ones that I told you about. And he looked into this, and he said that he found that it was just a Reddit user that had made up these stories, and it was these 3 stories were from the same person, and that he had posted these on different sites claiming to be different people and giving different stories. But I thought, it's interesting because they just investigated 3 of the stories. They didn't really look into some of these other credible stories where there's been a lot of witnesses, and there's been a lot of trustable people who've come forward and said they've seen this thing. We have firefighters, police officers, people of notoriety who have seen this creature in Chicago. And it doesn't get talked about that much because I think most people, we're on the UFO kick right now. It seems like Ghost too. So it doesn't seem like cryptids like the Mothman get a lot of attention, but he's been seen recently in Chicago, and there's been over 57 sightings. So something very interesting that's going on in Chicago. And I think we really have to wonder, what's happening? Why are people seeing this? What does that mean for Chicago if the Mothman's being seen there? Because, obviously, we see what happened with the Silver Bridge in Point Pleasant. Another big area about 10 or 15 years ago, there was tons of sightings, and I want to say it was in Wisconsin, Eau Claire maybe, along the Mississippi River up in Wisconsin. There was another river town, which is interesting, another river town. And you know what's interesting about this? And I've sort of made a connection with this, is all these Mothman sightings take place near bodies of water. And it seems like that Mothman, whatever he may be, he stays close to water, to bodies of water. When you think about Chicago, he's near Lake Michigan, right? You have this big body of water right next door to Lake Michigan, okay? He's seen in Point Pleasant, which is this big river town, okay? I believe it's the Ohio River. One of the rivers goes through there, okay? And he's seen in a river town up in Wisconsin, And a lot of these places seem to be by rivers or lakes, places with water. So I find it very interesting that all these Mothman sightings seem to occur around water. And it's like, what is the connection between the water and Mothman? Why does he stay near these areas of water? Is it that the water protects him? Is it that he hides in the water? Could he be able to go underwater and hide in the water? Is the water a source of just he needs water and he has to stay by areas where there's drinkable, potable water? Or, what is the significance about this? I just don't really know. Maybe you guys have some theories, but I don't really understand. But he seems to stay around water. And that's what I think is very interesting is you look at all these sightings of Mothman. He's always around an area that's by a river or by a lake, And it's almost like, there's some significance to the water, but I just don't know what it is. And I can't really tell you what that is. But yeah, these sightings are going on all over the United States. And I've heard of them in other locations too. And if you ever get a chance, read some of these stories about people who've encountered the Mothman. Because they're very terrifying, very creepy, and no one really talks about it. The mainstream media doesn't talk about it. Yet, there's so many reportings and sightings of the Mothman. I think there's more sightings, more current sightings than Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, Jersey Devil. But yet, we don't see anybody talking about it. Like, no one really brings it up. So, it's kind of crazy. But yeah, if you get a chance, check that out. If you get a chance. Also, John Keel wrote a book, Mothman Prophecies. If you get a chance, read that. Really good. Because it talks not only about the Mothman sightings that happened there in Point Pleasant, but it goes into detail about all the strange things that were happening in Point Pleasant during that time. And there was a lot of men in black sightings. A lot of people were saying these men wearing black suits, hanging out around town, telling people, do not talk about this. Do not mention this. So, yeah, definitely very interesting book to read. So if you get a chance, read it. It's much different from the movie starring Richard Gere. Definitely a good book, good read. So if you get a chance, read it. But as I said, Ghostbusters is coming out. And I don't know about you guys. I am super excited. I've been waiting for this for several years because of the COVID. It's pushed everything back. And I really wanted to see it. I wanted to see if they do justice to the first movie. I don't know if they will or not. But it'll be very interesting to see how it goes. What's interesting about the Ghostbusters movie is that originally it was a movie that Dan Aykroyd had written for himself and John Belushi. But, John Belushi died, so he had to recast new characters. And he was looking, at everybody from, Eddie Murphy and other actors. He was thinking about John Candy to play Rick Moranis' character. He wanted Eddie Murphy to play Winston Churchill's character. And, he was, casting different actors who would have been awesome in those roles. But initially, he landed on Bill Murray. And, it came along together great. And it turned out to be a good movie. And, I was kind of thinking to myself, if I were to recast Ghostbusters, with people, actors that were very active back in that time period when Ghostbusters came out, who would I pick and what roles and why? I think if I had to replace Dan Aykroyd, I think the best person to do so, if I had to replace Bill Murray, I think the best person to do so would have been Chevy Chase. Could you imagine Chevy Chase with Dan Aykroyd? The connection, that on-air connection that they had, in movies like Spies Like Us and Nothing But Trouble. and sort of that comedic genius that they were together. Oh man, that would be amazing. That would have been amazing to have Chevy Chase in the role of Bill Murray. And think about it, Bill Murray is essentially, same type of actor as Chevy Chase. They both play the same roles in movies, sort of the asshole type. But to me personally, I would have went with Chevy Chase to play Bill Murray's part if I had to replace him. And I think for Dan Aykroyd, oh man, I think that I probably would have went with Dana Carvey. Dana Carvey would have been good in Dan Aykroyd's role because he's kind of goofy, kind of silly, kind of the same type of actor. And I think Dana Carvey would have been good with Bill Murray. Dana Carvey would have been good with Chevy Chase if you had to recast both those characters. Could you imagine like a Dana Carvey Chevy Chase movie? That I don't think we've ever seen that, but that would have been awesome. I think that even John Candy in the Dan Aykroyd role, right? He would have been really good as that character because, he was kind of goofy, silly too. Like, could you imagine him as a Ghostbuster? That would have been awesome, Heck, I could even see Chris Farley. Like Chris Farley, could you imagine Chris Farley in Dan Aykroyd's role, right? With like Bill Murray or Chevy Chase. Oh man, that would be pretty awesome. Playing Winston Zeddemore, like I always thought like Richard Pryor would make a good Winston Zeddemore. Like his comedy and, how he would have reacted to be like, what, you want me to chase ghosts? I don't care as long as there's a paycheck. He would have been awesome for that part, and he would have brought that good comedic element to the movie, to the franchise. But yeah, I mean, there's other actors that I could see playing those roles, but I think at the end of the day, they picked a good cast, and it worked out really well. And they made two really great movies, I'm on board. I like the second movie. A lot of people don't like the second movie. Me personally, I do like the movie. It's really awesome. I like both movies. Wasn't a fan of the most recent Ghostbusters in 2016. The all-girl cast. And just because it didn't feel like a Ghostbusters movie. The problem is, instead of making a sequel, they tried to completely remake the first Ghostbusters movie, and it didn't work out. And especially didn't work out because they made it completely different, not by the characters, but they made it completely different by, the looks, the type of comedy that it had, It was a different type of comedy. It was a different type of movie. And, they filmed it much differently than the first two movies, so it didn't feel like a Ghostbusters movie. And I think also is that we already had this amazing Ghostbusters movie that didn't need to be redone. It was perfect the way it was. So my question is, why didn't they just make a continuation, a third movie that was a continuation of the first two, kind of, maybe the Ghostbusters had retired or something happened to them, and these female Ghostbusters take over and sort of continue on the story. But they didn't do that, and that's what they're trying to do with Ghostbusters Afterlife. It's sort of continuation of the first two movies where the Ghostbusters, I think, essentially have retired, and you have a new generation of Ghostbusters, these kids that are going to take over. So I heard a leak on the script, that there was a script leaked. And I hope I didn't ruin it for myself. And just, if you want to keep on watching, because I don't potentially know if this is true or not, if this is the real script, because I did read it. The synopsis of it, I did read. So I don't want to give away too much. So I want to throw a spoiler alert here. If you continue on watching this, just want to give you a heads up that this may spoil the movie. I don't know. But there was a script that was apparently leaked, and I read the synopsis for it. And basically, from my understanding, is that what happens is the Ghostbusters have kind of retired and are doing their own thing now. I guess like Ray is like on TV, and from my understanding, is Winston Zedmore has taken over the Ghostbusters, and it's now like this franchisee, and it's franchised out all over the world, and it's failing because they are running out of space for their like containment unit to hold all these ghosts. And apparently they go to this small town where Spangler had moved to because he was looking into something that was going on in the small town that had to do with the first movie. And essentially he found some mines where they were mining the stuff that brings about, spirits and ghosts and stuff. And apparently where his grandkids go there and move there to his old home. And Winston Zedmore actually comes there and asks for their help because of this problem, and his grandfather had found a solution, and that's how the Ghostbusters are called up and brought there. And then all the stuff starts happening in this small town, and they release something, and basically this is the movie. So I don't know how much of that is true. Some of it is, it seems like, from the trailers, but I don't know how much of that is true. And I'm really curious to see, like, what direction will they go with the which way will they go with the characters? Will it be the original cast helping out the characters for a while? Or are they going to completely hand over the reins to these, actors? Like, who will take charge? Who will be in charge for a while? Because obviously they're kids. I don't know if they can go fight ghosts by themselves. So will there be a new... Maybe Paul Rudd will take over, and he will be the new guy in charge to kind of help these kids and mentor them. I don't exactly know, but I'm just wondering, will they keep the original Ghostbusters there as mentors until these kids grow up, or they just give them full reins? Because obviously they can't keep on fighting ghosts. So how do you continue this movie? How do you hand the reins over and, transition to help these kids grow into Ghostbusters? Because obviously, as kids, they cannot handle this by themselves. They cannot travel and hunt ghosts and stuff. But, which that's really interesting to me, because they have them driving the ectoplasm 1 or whatever you call it. But it doesn't look like any of them can drive yet. So I don't exactly know how they are driving that legally, or how they take over to drive the ectoplasma and use some of the equipment that the Ghostbusters have when they're very young. So, I mean, I would think that there has to be someone taking over, as sort of a mentor role to help them get to where they need to be to grow up to be the new Ghostbusters. So it'll be interesting to see what direction they go with that. Well, thank you guys for listening. That's all the time we have.